The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a woman named Sarah Boone and the so-called Suitcase murder. Now, through the years, I've covered a bunch of cases involving suitcases, but usually the suitcase is used to dispose of someone who has unfortunately been dismembered. This case is different. In this case, Sarah Boone is accused of using a suitcase as the murder weapon. Here's the story. On February 24th, 2020, Sarah Boone and her boyfriend Jorge Torres were spending an evening together at Sarah's home. The two were drinking, and what happened that night is almost inexplicable. Jorge got inside of a suitcase that was then zipped shut. At one point, he wanted to get out and pleaded with Sarah to open the suitcase, but she refused. Instead, she turned on the video camera on her phone and started to record as Jorge begged for his life. Jorge died inside that suitcase, and now Sarah has been charged with second-degree murder. 8 different attorneys have tried to represent her, and all 8 have dropped out of the case. And now Sarah Boone is representing herself. It's the trial that some think will never happen, but everyone is waiting for. Sarah Boone and the suitcase murder. There's a piece of video I'm going to show you right now. This video is the most important piece of evidence in the case. It's also difficult to watch because we know what is happening. It's a video of Jorge Torres locked inside of a suitcase, begging for help, begging for life. Let's take a look.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. Might want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah.
You.
Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the up.
Sarah.
It's hard to believe that someone would do that. And it continued. Not everything is recorded on video, but he's in that suitcase all night long. So to understand the story and understand what was happening that night with Jorge Torres and Sarah Boone, I think we've got to answer this first question. Let's take a look. And that question is, how did Jorge get in the suitcase? And when I say that, I mean, like, what are the circumstances surrounding what's happening that night, what's happening in this relationship? What are they doing? Why is a grown man zipped inside of a suitcase to begin with? Let me bring in my experts to help us through all this. Relationship trauma expert, psychotherapist, and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey is with me. Also joining me, private investigator with over 20 years of experience, criminologist and profiler, Jason Jensen. Great to see you both. Dr. Janie, I want to begin with you because I think part of it is the relationship here, because he's calling her babe. So they're obviously an item, they're dating, they're in each other's lives. But she's being very, very cruel at that moment. So what do you think is going on in the relationship or going on in their lives that would result with him inside of a suitcase, locked?
Well, we can assume they had a very toxic relationship, Vinny. And when we look at relationships that we would call toxic, we would look at something that we call a trauma bond. A trauma bond is where the person who hurt you is also the same person you're trying to get to love you in its most basic form. So when we look at some of the things that she's saying in this video, this is how I felt when you're cheating on me, we can make some assumptions that she's holding a lot of resentment and a lot of hurt, and they've gone through a lot of difficulties in their relationship. And when he's calling her babe, there's a term of endearment there and trying to appeal to her loving side to get her to open that suitcase because he couldn't breathe. So this relationship, when we're probably going to dissect it through this case, can probably reveal a lot of what was in her mindset, whether she was under the influence of alcohol or not. That when someone is hurt and someone betrays their trust, and there's a lot of toxic dynamics in the relationship, it can be hot, cold, come here, go away, I love you, I hate you. A lot of those dynamics, like a roller coaster, can exist in that dynamic, Vinny.
So, Jason, in investigating this and trying to figure it out, right, we've got some statements from her. We're going to play one of them in a second. But in terms of the evidence, is there a way to examine whether it's the suitcase, the scene, or anything else to try to figure out how Jorge Torres got inside of that suitcase and zipped shut?
Obviously, the first thing we would look for is some kind of signs of trauma on Mr. Torres's body to see if he was placed in there like while he was unconscious or after some kind of altercation, if he was beaten, forced in there, or if there is no sign of injury, then you would probably assume it was voluntarily, like she claims later on, we'll see that she was drunk, that they were drinking wine. So was it voluntary initially, and then she thought it would be funny to zip him up and then became cruel? I mean, it seems to be the normal process that my logical thinking has this play out, is that it was voluntary and then got cruel.
So Sarah Boone made a 911 call. It wasn't that night. It was the following morning after she woke up, probably closer to midday when she woke up. Let's take a listen to a piece of it where she addresses the whole scenario of what was going on that night and how George ends up in the suitcase.
My boyfriend is dead.
No, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a case and we were playing, and like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Okay, Dr. Janie Lacey, we were playing last night, playing hide and seek. What are you hearing from her in that call?
Well, I'm hearing a matter of fact. If this is your boyfriend who you love, who you did not mean to hurt, and you are calling 911 to say that he's dead. So there sounds like there's a detachment as I'm hearing her make this phone call. And that would get me curious as to wondering where her head was at from the time that she stopped recording to the time that she made that phone call, because it sounds like there's so much of a detachment. This is someone that you love, you're in a relationship with, and it just sounds so matter of fact.
Jason Jensen, this always sort of stuck with me that we were playing hide and seek. That's not how you play hide and seek. And I think it's, there's no way that he could zip himself shut with that. If he could zip himself shut, then he would have been able to unzip it as well when he was in distress.
Exactly. This seems, based on the timing and the detachment, the tone of her voice, how she's reacting to the scenario, instead of crying and being distraught and, and clearly uncontrollable, she's actually calm, cool, collected, comes up with a story. It seems like it's an afterthought, like, why, how am I going to explain this? And she really exhibits no emotion for a long, 3.5 years of a relationship.
All right, my guests, Jason Jensen, Dr. Janie Lacey, staying with us. When we come back, our next question. It was a crazy night, but did she even remember it?
But I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out, and I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I thought he was okay. Like, I didn't, that, you all...
He's telling you he's not. He's telling you, Sarah, I can't breathe. He's saying your name, and you're like, that's my name, don't wear it out.
Guys, that's how we are with each other. Like, he has... Nobody understands our relationship. The whole suitcase thing never happened before.
Would you leave someone else in a suitcase? Would you leave Lucas in a suitcase jokingly? Because it was a joking matter. You put him in there jokingly. Would you leave Lucas jokingly in there? And you love Lucas, right? And you
I wouldn't do that to him either. I wouldn't do that to him.
So I just...
Well, it's not like, again, I don't think you all understand. Like, it's... I mean, it's not that was not my intention.
Well,
y'all don't have any idea what I've done for him.
But by your acts, and that's exactly right. You get to the point where you've done so much for somebody and they don't show you any appreciation.
He did.
Not by your words in the video. I don't get that.
We have lots of instances of Sarah Boone speaking on video. We have her while she's recording George inside the suitcase. You've got her there in the interrogation. She also spoke to the responding officer and the 911 call as well. So we've got lots of places where she's telling the story. I want you to listen to what she tells the responding officer about what happened.
We have a puzzle that we started in there. Okay. We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night. Okay. So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right? Okay. So he gets in the suitcase. Okay. Who is this guy? That's my ex-husband, my former husband. How did he live here with you guys? No. I called him over here. Okay, okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. So then he came over here. Here, let's talk in private, okay? I called you guys. Mm-hmm. I tried giving you CPR. The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep. When did you do CPR? This morning, when I found him. Before you called? Yes! 1 o'clock right now. I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out, and I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys. Did he get here before the fire department got here? Who? Your husband or your ex-husband? Yes. Okay. Where does he live at? Right down the street. Okay. So you were playing and you zipped him up in... I did, okay. But then I fell asleep. Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened. I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what. What kind of medical conditions does he have? None that I know of. Nothing that you know of? None that I know of. You didn't take any medical? No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine. Okay. Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. Mm-hmm. That's all that happened.
Okay. The story changes a little bit. There's some pieces that are left out, but there are points where she looks like she's shocked by what has happened here. Which brings me to my next question. After this unusual night, did she remember it? Like, did she even remember what had happened here? Let's bring back in our guests, Dr. Janie Lacey and Jason Jensen. Jason, what does your gut tell you as she's telling this story to the first responding officer and is like, you know, I woke up and then, oh, and it's like, does she even remember what had happened that night?
You have to ask yourself if she's even recounting the events as they take place, because for starters, they don't really match up with the video that she took on her own phone. So why is that? Is it a deliberate error, you know, or is it intentional? Like she is hoping no one will find that video and she's making this up because she's acting like she's surprised. She's acting like she's shocked. But is it really an act, or is it because she doesn't know? She doesn't remember because there was drinking involved. So if she's so inebriated that she doesn't remember, then how well was she operating, you know, conducting herself the night before when this all happened? That's really what you're going to want to try and figure out, is if she's so inebriated she can't even walk or talk or conduct herself. So, you know, that's what the evidence shows.
Dr. Janie Lacey, what I want to do, because I think Jason brings up a great point here about the drinking. I want to play another piece of the interrogation where they talk about the drinking. And we've heard her say, we just had a bottle of wine. Let's watch.
You told me on but you told me on recording, like, that you were not drunk, he was not drunk, you guys were having a good time.
I can't get drunk. Number one, I do not want to get drunk. I don't like being non-compos mentis, having my wits about myself. I don't like feeling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm just saying, you're making it sound like he's a raging alcoholic today, and yesterday I was kind of asking you those questions, and you're like a little defensive, like, no, we're not alcoholics.
I'm not.
We are not, you know. But you guys were both sober on Sunday, to your knowledge, because when I said you went and passed out, you were like, no, I didn't pass out, I just fell asleep. So now it's kind of like, what is it? Were you guys drinking and it got out of hand and it got physical?
No.
Or is it?
Sunday was one of the better days that we have had in quite some time.
So where were you guys at on drunkenness, not drunkenness on Sunday? You told us you weren't drunk.
No, I was not drunk.
Right.
I was not drunk.
Okay, Dr. Janie Lacey, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to give my opinion here, but I have one about whether or not she was drunk based just on the sound of her voice in that video. But what are your thoughts? Do you think it's possible that she blacked out here and didn't realize all the things that she was doing? Didn't realize that she was taunting him? Didn't realize that he was begging for his life?
Well, there was a lot of contradictions as we were hearing from her own words. But when we know that people have blackouts and they don't remember, her reaction afterwards would be what is contradicting to people who do black out when they've drunken too much, because her reaction would show that she's very distraught, she's shocked, she couldn't believe these things have happened. It's someone that she loved her. So her reaction and the shock of her boyfriend being found dead would appear, in my opinion, to be very different if she did not remember exactly what happened. So, you know, the only other bucket that we can probably consider is that, yes, she was under the influence, but did she maybe not intend to deliberately hurt him, but wanted to punish him because of the taunting and all these types of things? You know, that would lead me in a little bit down that type of path. And then obviously we now see her trying to make up the story or to try to piece what happened to make sense to the investigators, because you could see the defensiveness when certain levels of questioning is asking to her. So her reaction is very out of proportion to someone that would have a blacking out and then they wake up and realize what exactly has happened. It just doesn't add up to what we would normally see.
Jason, as we've seen these different statements, right, beginning with the video itself, we know what's going on there, the 911 call, the responding officer body cam video, and then the interrogation. There are some consistencies there, but what are you hearing and noticing from her telling this story or speaking in 4 different times in 4 different places?
I think what I see that stands out to me the most is her voice, what she's saying during the recording of Mr. Torres in the suitcase, because you do occasionally hear some slurring. You hear some vindictiveness, some resentment. So one of the things I understand from my education and experience concerning alcohol use is that that's an inhibitor reducer. So a good illustration is if you're a happy drunk, a happy person, happiness comes out. If you're an angry person, an angry drunk comes out. So this, while she's drinking, she even admits it during the interrogation that she doesn't like to lose control of herself. So she knows that this mean person comes out when she's drinking. Now she's trying to walk it back.
We have about 30 seconds here. Dr. Janie Lacey, you find any significance that the first call she makes in the morning is not 911, but is her ex-husband?
There's a lot of significance in that, because if you're waking up and you find out your love of your life at this moment is not alive anymore, your reaction would be to get him help, to call 911. But to call your ex-husband and then having that delay is very, very strange and out of the norm of someone would normally do in this situation.
Yeah, strange and out of the norm. That is a precise description of this scenario and this tragedy in the death of Jorge Torres. Dr. Janie Lacey, Jason Jensen, thank you both. Appreciate your time, your insight, and your expertise. All right, folks, I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan as we continue our investigation into the Suitcase murder. One thing has become very clear, that the woman accused of using a suitcase as a murder weapon, Sarah Boone, clearly has some issues. And these issues have made this case much more complex. Here's more of the story. Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres have had a very tumultuous relationship, but things crossed the line one February night in 2020 when Jorge was zipped shut inside of a suitcase. He pleaded with Sarah to let him out as she taunted him while recording it all on video. Jorge died in that suitcase, and Sarah is now charged with murder and will be representing herself at trial if and when that trial ever happens. She's representing herself. That's because she had 8 attorneys, and 8 different attorneys left the case and left Sarah Boone. They all came in willing and ready to represent her. They're all true believers in criminal defense, but Sarah Boone was just too much for 8 of them. So now she's representing herself. So who is Sarah Boone? Well, I think the best way to try to understand who she is to take a listen to Sarah Boone in different places, different circumstances, to take I think a peek inside her mind, the way she thinks, the way she speaks, and just the way she is.
And I feel that she is untruthful with me and full-blown prejudice against me, which I believe adds to her nasty attitude towards me, and I do not trust her. So I have prepared this for you. It's a letter and an continuation of the letter from the video that sir you are aware of. And everyone constantly blames me that I am the reason why I am supposedly on attorney number 8, which I am not the reason for any of them.
I fell asleep. I don't know if they suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what. What kind of medical conditions do they have? None that I know of. Nothing that you know of. None that I know of. No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine. Okay. Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to go hide and seek. That's all that happened. Okay. So I don't know if he had a heart attack or what in there. Like, I don't know what happened.
No, No, wait 1 second, because I know, like, with you all, and then, like, because you continually ask me, like, time frames, where I told you, like, I don't bother even looking at the clock most of the time. So it's like a guesstimate. So for all I know, maybe it was 10 minutes.
Okay. But the point is, you left the living room where he was begging for help and went upstairs. Regardless of how long you were there, you left. You say,
I thought he was the boy calling wolf. Again.
Okay.
So when he asked to be let out, like, what's your reasoning for not letting him out?
When I was upstairs?
No, when he's asking on the video, he asked multiple times. He asked to be let out. I can't breathe. What? Like, why didn't you let him out?
Well, number one, I had no idea it was going to end like that.
Okay.
Number one.
Okay.
Number two, just, you know what? I'll give you 5 minutes or so in there. I'll give you 5 minutes or so.
I still want you to be aware of what it is that I am going through, still. And it's a matter of ethics and professionalism with how she should be treating me. I shouldn't have to come up with a pre-planned judge in order for her to do so.
I mean, why? Why did you not let him out? It's just a simple question.
To be honest with you, I mean...
Were you punishing him?
No.
So there's a little taste of Sarah Boone. Again, remember now how this trial is going to go. She is going to represent herself. So that brings me to our next question. Let's take a look. With Sarah Boone representing herself, what will this trial look like? Will this be chaos? How do you control someone like that? Will she behave? Will she not behave? What will she say? Let's bring in my experts. Joining us, retired judge for the 9th Judicial Circuit, where this is going to take place, and author of the book, The Velvet Hammer, the Honorable Belvin Perry, America's Judge. Also with me, clinical and forensic psychologist, researcher, and expert on violent crime, and the author of the book, The New Evil, Dr. Gary Brucata is also with me tonight. Thank you both for being here. Judge, I'll begin with you. All right, what will this trial look like? With Sarah Boone representing herself and having this type of personality through the years, I know you've come across people like this.
Vinnie, it will be like a 3-ring circus in that courtroom. When people show you who they are, you better believe it. She's been acting bizarre. She's all over the place. She refused to come to court sometime when things does not go her way. That judge is going to have his hands full dealing with Miss Boone and her many different moods. It's going to be quite an entertaining trial.
Entertaining, perhaps. Dr. Gary Brucata, what are your thoughts about how someone like this, Sarah Boone, will behave when she's the one who's going to have to speak on behalf of herself and will have a platform inside that courtroom?
Well, I think in order to understand what's probably going on with the personality, we have to think about the two different types of people who commit offenses out of a kind of jealousy or revenge, which is what the videotape of this individual would suggest. One type is a kind of impulsive individual who isn't really a nasty person, but who feels hurt and acts out and experiences remorse and would probably never do it again. You sometimes even experience sympathy for that type of person as a member of a jury or someone in the public. The other type, who has a long pattern generally of being a nasty, difficult person, is the type that maliciously eliminates a person that they feel has hurt them, often in a symbolic way, where the idea is to use a way of killing them that really makes them suffer and levels the playing field. I can't breathe when you cheat on me. I feel trapped when you cheat on me, so you're going to die in a bag. And that kind of individual in a courtroom is unbelievably manipulative, in the sense that if you're not listening to them, believing them, paying attention to them, siding with them, they're basically going to scream, act out, manipulate everybody. And so what I think you have to picture is a person who is going to do in the courtroom what they would do in any dynamic, whether it's with a lawyer, a judge, a relationship, or whatever. You pay attention to me. I'm the center of attention, or you're going to suffer. And so picture a three-ring circus like was just predicted.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now, Judge, there's logistics as well. I want you to take a listen to what happened inside the courtroom where they're talking about, because she's not out on bond, right? So she is incarcerated, has been for years, how they're going to handle that situation with her being able to move about the courtroom.
Am I, in your opinion, a flight risk or detrimental to the courtroom and am a threat of any type of harm?
Based on what I've researched, I don't know you personally, but based on my research, I don't think it would be appropriate for you not to be in restraints.
And then what was the year, please, for the charge that was dropped with the domestic violence?
It was 2018.
2018?
Correct.
And it is now 2024. Okay. And you're going solely off of what, the arrest affidavit? What is it that you're using to conclude due to this occurrence that was dropped that I would not be able to be unrestrained?
Correct. Your arrest history, the information I read, all the research that I've done, that's where I'm basing my conclusion on.
But what specifically from that 2018 charge?
The fact that you were charged with battery by strangulation, which is a violent act, is one of the reasons why I've said that I do not believe it's appropriate for you not to be in restraints.
But it was never proven, correct, because it was dropped?
It was dropped. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
All right, so ma'am, the court's going to grant your motion and that you will be unhandcuffed for every hearing moving forward. And instead of being in the jury box, you'll be seated at counsel's table, okay? You may still have your leg restraints on, but you'll be hands-free. For the purposes of trial, in accordance with the Florida Supreme Court decision in Weaver, you will be hands-free and you will not be shackled with legs. But the stun cuff, as identified by Sergeant Barnett, will be affixed to you and you'll have to sign that waiver.
Okay, Judge, you've got an accused murderer who will be uncuffed, unshackled. There'll be a stun cuff or something that's on her. What are the concerns there, and how common is a scenario like this?
During the numerous first-degree murder cases that I handled as a judge, I would often use the stun cuff. It is rare unless someone has exhibited violent behavior in a courtroom or they have made threats for them to be shackled and handcuffed during a trial, because that has a built-in prejudice. So it's not unusual that she's going to have that stun cuff on. The judge will more than likely confine her either to the counsel table or to the podium when she's questioning witnesses during the case.
I'll tell you what, she must have liked hearing, I'm going to grant your motion, meaning, you know, now in her pro se shoes, she's winning in court. Dr. Gary Bucata, let me ask you about the danger. Do you think that she could pose a potential physical danger in court, or is it going to be more of what she says?
Well, I think what you want to remember about people who have kind of aberrant personalities, which may be what's going on here, that sometimes they lack empathy. And when you lack empathy, you lack an imagination for other people being able to tell that what you're doing is ridiculous. So what you sometimes say, and you do, is a kind of ham acting. You do an exaggerated, you know, lots of gesticulating and screaming and raising your voice to be performative, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go the extra mile and hit someone, because the whole point is that you're pretending that you're experiencing a lot of emotion and impulse, but you know better than to actually strike somebody because you're going to get in more trouble. If this was truly an impulse offense where the person just exploded and had absolutely no braking system, that's the type of person who's more likely to hit somebody. This is the kind of person that would have insight. I better cut this show off before I get in more trouble. So expect a lot of ham acting, but braking right before doing anything that bad.
All right, my guests are staying with us. When we come back, next question, what possible defense does she have? If she sees this, you're going to be number 8, Brian.
He got in there on his own. She has no duty to help him out of there. She can taunt him. That is not a crime, and she does not have to help him. There is no Good Samaritan law.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Look, it's a difficult case, but you have one avenue to go down, and you got to present a mental health defense because they've got the video, they've got her statements, they've got the evidence right there. Let's do it once and let's do it the right way. If I was in Florida, I'd represent her without hesitation.
Joseph Krowski Jr., he's up in Massachusetts, great attorney. You've seen him on the show plenty of times. He said if he was in Florida, he'd represent her. He'd be number 9. 8 attorneys on and off this case. But I want you to take a listen to another one of the regular guests that I have on my programs. Brian Watkins, great attorney out of San Diego. Here's what he had to say.
But here's the problem with this case. I don't see a crime here. You keep saying that she locked him in the suitcase. There's been no evidence that she locked him in the suitcase.
If she sees this, you're going to be number 8, Brian.
He got in there on his own. She has no duty to help him out of there. She can taunt him. That is not a crime, and she does not have to help him. There is no Good Samaritan law. So unless there is evidence of force or fear where she put him in that suitcase against his will, where is the crime?
This is fascinating.
You don't have to help anybody. You don't have to help anybody. If you're so dumb, you put yourself in a suitcase. You can put yourself in a suitcase. I don't have to help you. You can jump into a swimming pool and not know how to swim. I don't have to help you. I can watch you drown and taunt you while you're drowning.
Wow, right? Okay, so this brings me to my next question, which is, for Sarah Boone, what possible defense does she actually have here? What possible defense? Did Brian Watkins just outline one for Sarah Boone? Let's bring back in our guests, America's Judge, the Honorable Belvin Perry, and Dr. Gary Brucato. Judge, let me ask you, you're down in Florida, you know the law better than anybody down in Florida. If he got into that suitcase voluntarily, is Brian Watkins onto something here, that there's no duty to get him out? There's nothing illegal about taunting someone?
The question is, how did the suitcase get zipped up?
So, how does if he allows himself to get zipped in, is that still then on her to unzip it?
When she hears his cries that he needs to get out and she does nothing, the problem with this particular defendant is you don't know what she's going to say during the trial, either by questioning witnesses. The defense may change. It's like a moving target. You just don't know what she's going to say. And I just don't buy this thing about him voluntarily getting into a suitcase and then it mysteriously gets zipped up and then she has no liability for those actions. I don't think that dog will hunt in Florida.
All right, Dr. Gary Brucato, another obvious place to potentially go with someone like Sarah Boone. And Joseph Krowski talked about this, which is some sort of mental defense here. And that would, generally, does she understand what she's doing? Is she in it? What are your thoughts about at least what you're seeing of her? Obviously, you haven't examined her, but what you're seeing of her in terms of her mental state. Like, does she know where she is? Does she know what's going on?
Well, there are a few things that you could mean by mental health, in the sense that there might be a defense attempted that tries to create a kind of sympathy with the jury that this was a stormy relationship in which somebody was hurt or battered or emotionally abused and was ultimately defending herself. The idea that alcohol was involved, there may have been some lack of inhibition if she had consumed it. The idea that there could be some loss of contact with reality during a state of dissociation or extreme emotion or psychosis. The problem is that you have a recording of an individual who is, basically barking at a bag with a person in it, essentially indicating to him that there's a leveling of the playing field. This is how I feel when you do this to me. And I think it's going to be very difficult to say that this is an individual who doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. As a matter of fact, the essence of that kind of revenge is, I know what wrong is, and now I'm going to be the judge, jury, and executioner and level the playing field because you did something to me that is wrong. In order to do that, you have to know the difference between right and wrong, which kind of blows out of the water the notion that you have no ability to tell the difference between the two.
That is
necessary for that.
That is exquisite analysis right there. Judge, the fact that she may have blacked out from alcohol and because when she's confronted with the video, it seems to me her reaction is she did not know there was a video of this that she actually recorded. Does that play into any form of a defense for her blacking out?
It could if the jury believes her, but I just don't think, based upon her behavior, based upon the evidence, the videotape and everything else, that defense of blacking out is going to work. She is a very manipulative, somewhat mean-spirited individual who is extracting her revenge on him while he was in the suitcase. And it's going to be kind of difficult for her to unring the bell of all the statements she made while this guy was pleading to get out of the suitcase.
Dr. Gary Brucato, something else has happened in this case, and I know Judge Belvin Perry probably had people like this as well. She writes a lot of letters to the judge. My guess is if she's convicted and ends up continuing her stay behind bars, she may very well continue that practice. What does that tell you about her? She writes these very long handwritten motions and letters and want ads trying to hire a lawyer. What kind of person does that?
Well, it tells me that she probably has a great deal of emotion that is surrounding a feeling of there being an injustice. When there's something that feels to her like something unfair has happened, she's enraged and she can't stop the emotion from pouring out of her. And this desire to get a authoritative person to step in and do something about it, like a kind of listen to me, rescue me, take care of me, help me, that kind of thing. And one envisions a person that probably has done that in a pattern of relationships over time. Reached out to people to take care of her, developed kind of dependencies with them, screamed and yelled at them all the time, had stormy relationships, accused them, got mad, tried to level the playing field and moved on to the next one. And I think you could guess that there was some of that.
I guess it. Big thank you to both of you. We're out of time. Honorable Judge Belvin Perry and psychologist Dr. Gary Brucato. We appreciate it. Folks, Sarah Boone has made this case about herself with her antics, etc. But let's not forget, this case is about a man who suffered a horrific death, Jorge Torres. And let's hope that at some point the truth comes out and Jorge Torres gets some sense of justice in a case that hopefully happens one day. I'm Vinnie Politan. I'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.